Be afraid, not of growing slowly. Be afraid of standing still. That is a Chinese proverb that sent chills through my spine. For here is a likely fact you ignored for some time. You are suffering deeply and are in a crisis of life. Now, luckily for you, crisis will always breed the opportunity to emerge from the deepest, darkest shadows and into the light of prosperity, which is what I hope to leave you with by the end of this talk. However, and unfortunately for you, your view of crisis is skewed and you don't know what's designed to be hitting you, not that it just bang hits you. Hence the impetus for today's talk as we focus on doing you and becoming the number one priority in your life. Now, let me explain to you how crisis works, and I'll use a story about a fire that occurred some years ago in a popular train station out in the UK. Now, this train station employed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of staff, which helped millions and millions and many more millions commute daily. People like you and I going to work, doing their thing wherever they're going. Now, this station, like normal stations, had escalators leading up and down the tracks to help folks move about. Makes sense. Now, one day, a passenger noticed a small piece of paper on fire towards the end of one of the escalators. The passenger, being just a good human, notified nearby staff, who did what seemed quite natural and fanned the flames with a few magazines, saw it was out, and went back to his post. Now, unbeknownst to this staff member and to everyone else at this time, there was a small fire developing underneath the framing of the escalators, which is what caused the small piece of paper to catch fire at the bottom of the escalator. Now, this relatively small fire was brewing and brewing and gaining more life. And what was giving it more life, you might ask? It was being given life by each train that pulled into and out of the station, which at this point was happening every 2 to 3 minutes. How so? You see, every time the train pulled in, the speed in which it arrived and then stopped brought with it air. And every time it pulled out, same concept. Air, as you might know, acts as fuel for fire. And after about an hour of this persisting in and out, air in and out, the train station eventually began to explode and the fire spread, killing over 30 people. Certainly an obvious crisis, certainly tragic. Now, here's some more pain in this tragedy. Remember that initial staff member that saw the paper on fire? He never reported it, investigated, or mentioned the small fire to anyone because he was told never to assume anything, stick to your job, and never under any circumstance scream or yell fire, because that would cause massive panic to the public, because fire means crisis. So the employee and everyone else just stood still. Now, seriously, Jeff, what does this mean for me? I once cried because I had no shoes. Then I saw a man with no feet. That's from Helen Keller. Now, you take those words and you take that fire story and you wrap it up into context, and the empathy in you tells you that you should never complain, because not only could someone, but someone almost always has it worse than you do. I once cried because I had no shoes, but then I saw a man with no feet. I see it as you are in a crisis of life. And first, you let life take your shoes. Then you gave up your feet because you fear it could be worse. Therefore, like the Chinese proverb says, you are now standing still. And you shouldn't take that lightly, as stillness breeds an inept, docile, and decrepit life experience, which I pray isn't you. But if it is, your life right now is like that little piece of paper on fire, except you can't see it. There's no way you can see it, because why wouldn't you say something or look to put it out at the root? And I get how you might be confused by this, because you think the fire is at your feet, whereas, just like the station, it is under and inside the platform, meaning you are misconstruing tiny distractions posing as obstacles to be your problem or your crisis. Your environment, your job, your relationships, your money, your luck and lack, it's all against you. And therefore, like having no feet, it could be worse. So let me not do anything, as it might worsen my worstness. How about this for another excuse? You're treating your life like the staff member who didn't say anything because someone told you you should stay in your lane. You've been culturized into a lifestyle of brokenness because someone convinced you that nothing changes for people like you. And you believed it. Let me put it to you like this, because you probably missed it. How do generational curses not just happen, but continue? How do poverty-driven mindsets not just happen, but continue? How do cycles become a cycle that keeps cycling? It's because the crisis of life is caused by an implosion, not an explosion. But because we can see the fireworks associated with the exoteric, we aren't mindful of the esoteric. In the same way, we see the bills, the debt, the weight, divorce, dead-end job. We act as if it was a sudden crisis and event, when in reality, you've been stacking compound interest on horrific decisions, rotting you from the inside out, some of you for decades. You want to know how companies fail? Top down. Toxic CEO, toxic leadership, toxic culture catches fire. You know how families fail? Top down. Toxic marriage, toxic parenting, toxic children, generational curses catches fire. You know how people fail? How you fail? Top down. Toxic thoughts, toxic minds, toxic life, thinking yourself into depression, weakness, and poverty catches fire. So now your crisis is that you're waiting for an obvious crisis to justify dispensing with the ineptitude, the incompetence, and the desecration of your spirit and life. You're waiting for the entire building to go up in flames. You're waiting for unexpected loss. You're waiting for terrible tragedy. All the while you're walking around with no shoes. And even worse, no feet. The fire inside of you is already lit, and either slowly it'll burn you alive over the course of time, or slowly inspire you to move out of stillness starting right now. Are you hearing me? The crisis of your life is that all the evidence has shown you that if you keep doing nothing about your life, nothing you want to happen with your life will happen. But your life still has to happen, yet you remain still and frozen. And that stillness, your stillness, is the air and the breath of life. Life, like the train pulling in and out of the station, it's the air and life for depression, weakness, poverty, brokenness, ineptitude, and conformity. Look around you. Do you not already know where your life is headed? You are in a crisis of life, and the only way out is the only way out of any crisis is to first identify that you are in a crisis. Be afraid that if you don't grow slowly, you slowly die longer. Stillness is an illness, and the realness of this life, business, regardless of how you feel, Change your culture, change your habits, change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Do you and stay rich.